So, hi guys, welcome back. Families in panic, and it's particularly relevant for clients who we're working with at the moment, maybe 10, 11 clients, I'm not quite sure how many's in, because there's a process that everybody has to go through. When we get a young guy or a young lady coming in from wherever it is, they've been suffering from an addiction for however many long, for however long, for that one alcoholic or for that one heroin addict, there are, in my estimation, at least 6 post-traumatic stress victims around them. You can't even live in the vicinity of an active addiction and not be affected traumatically. You cannot get up close and personal with any type of addiction and not suffer your own degree, your own flavour of trauma. And that depth of that trauma and the ferocity of that trauma is going to vary from person to person, because you've got the thick-skinned, you've got the sensitive, you've got most addictions are surrounded by raging denial, and it's an ecosystem that feeds itself. The worse it gets, the worse it gets. For everybody who gets hurt, people next to them get hurt or confused, and it just goes on and on and on. Hurt people. That's how much we do know. We can analyze it and we can scrutinize it and write thesis on it, but here's the top and the bottom of it. Hurt people, okay? And people come into the addiction treatment context and they've suffered themselves, and a lot of people say it's self-inflicted, etc., etc., and it might be, many times it is, but many times it's a result of simply being unable to stop that cycle, not knowing that this, I can't even say not knowing that there is an out of that cycle. Breaking free from that cycle is simply not an option. It's never gonna stop. And if you line 100 addicts up and talk to every one of them and ask how many of them made promises, real deep, sincere promises to themselves, even in the dead of night, okay, even at stupid o'clock when we're lying there sweating and we know we're going to have a fix the next morning, but we promise ourselves deep down inside, I'm going to do something about this tomorrow, I'm going to get the kind of help I need tomorrow. And then when tomorrow comes, we find that tomorrow's actually tomorrow and it never actually gets there. So the cycle continues. And people get disappointed, people get let down, people are built up. I promised my sister maybe realistically about 30 times over the period of about 6 years that I was going to stop. And after 2 or 3 times of promising her, she was unable to believe me. But she was also unable to stop this sense of hope. Well, maybe this time. And then the relapse would come and the phone would ring, or the police would turn up, or the hospital would phone. And it was trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. Okay, so when the alcoholic arrives at Bethesda and starts to kind of blossom, they don't get sober when they arrive at Bethesda. They get sober when they leave Bethesda. Okay, you don't get sober when you go into an addictions treatment center. You get sober when you leave. Sober is the state of your heart, the condition, the attitude behind your eyes. You know, we can smile at people all the time, but if there's a silent assassin behind the eyes, hurt people. If there are resentments within the heart and the psyche of the now alcohol-free alcoholic, somebody's going to get hurt, and that's not sober. Okay. And we recently had a young lady leave Bethesda. She was a little starlet. She actually took each of the team members by surprise in her own special way. I was assigned, I'm not going to mention her, please, I hope she's listening this morning, but I was assigned to take her for an assessment about half an hour's drive away, and I thought, I've got to spend half an hour in the car with this now. Absolute crackerjack, absolute mad as a box of frogs. And then on the journey, we started to talk one-to-one, and what a beautiful, sensitive, frustrated genius was in this young lady, okay? turns out the crackerjack and the fireworks and the babble, 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 babble is her reaction to performance anxiety and being the fear of being judged and all kinds of emotional, psychological dilemmas that she was going through. But once those storms passed, it was a completely different lady. And she left recently, and we all feel really hopeful for her. I know this young lady's using days are over. They are finished. She might not know that yet, but she'll get there. You know, we don't advocate relapse, but we're not scared of it either. We can take all the certificates and qualifications, and we can give all these lectures and seminars and written assignments, but the best teacher within the addiction treatment industry is relapse. The problem is that teacher is trying to teach people who really do feel themselves to be above the law. That plug that's lying down there, mate. We must remember when we're dealing with people who suffer from addictions, we're dealing with people who are lawless. They're not above the law. They're not beneath the law. They are completely lawless. Okay, so when the relapse hits and they wake up on that cardiac machine, there's something within us will not quite grasp that maybe I'm beaten. Maybe I'm beaten, and the number of times people come back tell me that it's crystal clear they've never really accepted that they're beaten. Okay, so our young starlet goes home, and within, I'll say 12 hours, Big John gets a phone call and needs a Skype from the parents. The parents were absolutely spinning out, absolutely did not know what to do, because their little angel, quote unquote, has gone home, and she's going through now reverse culture shock. Okay, she's been in the cocoon, she's been in Bethesda for however long, and she's gone back home now, and everything at home, it sounds to me as if in this particular instance, everything at home stayed the same while she was away. This young lady's come away, she's dealt with some horrific material, we've really gone through the mill with this girl, and she's come out of the other end. So she's gone home now, a developing new flower, and it's like she's not brand new, but she knows now that there is a new normal that she can achieve. Okay, so she's gone home with all our warnings ringing in her head, and she finds out that nobody's changed, nobody else has changed. You know, and a lot of addicts and alcoholics, when they go home, they relapse off the back of dynamics such as injustice. This girl's come through the ringer. She's been put through the ringer at Bethesda. And this is not for the faint-hearted, this type of program. And this girl's gone through the ringer, and then she's gone home, and her parents, in order to service their own post-traumatic stress from whatever's gone on in the past, they are extra sensitive, hypersensitive, and distrusting and suspicious. She leaves the room. I'm not sure, this is not a specific example, but this is what happens. We go home, everybody's glad to see us, and then everybody watches every move we make. We go into the bathroom. Where are you going? I'm going for a pee. Why? What have you been drinking? And then we find people, particularly really, really anxious moms, they walk past us and we can kind of sense them trying to smell our breath. We may have been to the shop. We need some space. We need some freedom. We need to hear the birds sing. We need to listen to the waves on the beach. So we go out, and when we come back, everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for this catastrophe that they're almost, it could be said, wishing for. Post-traumatic stress. And I'll say it to moms and dads and pastors and counsellors and ex-counsellors and potential counsellors. If you take away the substance, you're left with trauma. It can't be any other way. The substance is not the problem. The substance is a smoke screen to deny a problem. Okay, the alcohol is never the problem. The crack cocaine is never the problem. These are all symptoms of something deeper and really life-controlling. And what we do is, I'm just glancing at the clock, I'm going to go around about 10 minutes-ish. Every one of us, whether you've been in a substance dependency or not, every one of us, we service that which we carry inside of us. Okay? Lonely people get married a lot. Angry people can't get into relationships with anybody unless there's some degree of competition. Okay? We service our psychological, spiritual, emotional constipation. We get full of resentments and hurt and frustrations, and we can only feel comfortable with similar type of dangerous people. We're not safe people. Safe people never get engaged in relationships with unsafe people. It just doesn't, that's never going to work. It never happens. I was in a relationship for, I think it was about 12 years, okay, as a using addict. I was bang at it. Intravenous heroin and amphetamine, in and out of prison, in and out of hospitals. And I had one particular girlfriend who followed me all over the country. She visited me in, I think it was about 19 different prisons in different parts of England. And at one point, I saw that she was walking across the visiting room towards me. And it's a good-looking girl, a very good-looking girl. Blonde, curly hair, sparkly blue eyes. Everything that the guys dream of in the prison. And I went into the prison visiting room, and I used to sit in the far corner away from the door of the visiting room. And it was just a visit in Manchester Prison one day. She walked in, and she walked across the room towards me, and I realised I was feeding this need to be approved of by being involved with a woman who was just externally stunning, but internally we had nothing in common. Absolutely nothing in common. We actually hated each other for many, many years of that relationship. The thing was, when she walked across the room and sat down at my table, it looked good on me. She looked good on my arm. She stroked my ego. Okay? So the ego is absolutely shattered and broken. It's in a gazillion pieces. So I get involved with people who are of a similar damage. Okay? I've got absolutely no sense of personal identity, so I mix with misfits. Okay? I feel really dirty and low about myself. So I mix with people like, I used to take great pleasure in looking down my nose at the alcoholics. At least I'm not like that. At least I shower. At least I shave. At least I don't have a piece of string around my waist holding my trousers up. And I was servicing this internal chaos, this internal conflict within me. I was telling me I'm not that bad. And the trauma continued. 27 prisons, 6.5 years in 27 prisons. And then when the police came on the 7th of November 1987, I was relieved. I couldn't wait. I didn't apply for bail. When they came bursting through the door, I welcomed them in. Good morning, boys. Let me just get dressed and we'll be away. I get arrested. I get taken to the police cells. My attorney comes in, tells me I'm not going to get bail. And I don't want bail. And then I got a 2.5-year prison sentence. And my first thought was, what am I going to do after that? Then what? Then what? Trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And everything I touched turned to hurt or stolen. And everybody around me was traumatized. So when you go home from treatment, Princess and Prince Charming and Superman and whatever it is you think you are, you're going back into a traumatized environment waiting for it to go wrong. Absolutely waiting for it to go wrong. And when it doesn't go wrong, that puts our loved ones in touch with they can no longer play the blame game. They can gossip and argue and throw things at you and call you names, blah, 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 as long as you're using, boozing, cruising and your world's falling apart. But you get clean and sober, then you go home, then who are you going to blame? Two things that keep addiction alive: secrets and blame. Emotional, psychological, spiritual secrets, and it's always somebody else's fault. Let me tell you something, man. Fault is completely irrelevant. I couldn't care less whose fault it was. If we find out whose fault it was, if we backtrack to the day you were abused by an uncle, or the day you were bullied in school or ridiculed by your teacher, if we go back to that specific, are you going to get clean and sober because you found a scapegoat? No, you're not. Blame is irrelevant. What are you going to do about the problem? That's the only thing you can address today. Okay, and here's the problem. Families are panicking, eh? Families are panicking, and it's 65% justified, all right? But the longer your daughter stays clean and sober, the less excuse you're going to have for spinning out and phoning counsellors, and it's all falling apart. So addiction treatment, our facility is a facility for addiction treatment. Rehabilitation starts when the client leaves and the whole family is involved. And this is what every family member's got to ask themselves. What is it about me that needs to change? What do I need to... What is it about me that makes my home uncomfortable? Why does everything have to fit into my frame of reference? What is it about me? How can I change? This is my daughter. If I profess to love my daughter, I'll do anything. I'll change whatever it is I need to change to make our relationship peaceful. Okay, that's... Told you, I said 15 minutes, didn't I? All right, see you just now, guys.